The last line of defense. The vast darkness of space stretched before Captain Vance Mercer like an endless abyss. His weathered hands gripped the command chair as the Sentinel drifted silently through the void, power systems barely functioning. The last human battleship was running on fumes, hiding in the shadow of a massive gas giant in the Helios sector. Once a thriving human colony, now just another conquest of the Krell Empire. "Status report," Vance called out, his voice rough from lack of sleep. Lieutenant Nyssa Webb looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes matching those of everyone else on the bridge. "Main reactor at 17%. Life support stable but running on auxiliary. Weapons systems." She paused, functional but barely. The Sentinel was dying, just like Earth's fleet, just like humanity's resistance. Commander Elias Frost approached from the tactical station, his tall frame now stooped with exhaustion. "Captain, we've maintained radio silence for 3 weeks. No contact from any human outposts." Vance nodded grimly. The silence was deafening, no transmissions from Earth, from the colonies, from anyone. The Krell had been thorough in their campaign to eliminate what they called the human infestation. 6 months ago, Earth had gone dark after one final transmission. Hold the line, whatever the cost. They'd been holding ever since, though Vance wasn't sure what for any more. "Captain," came a synthetic voice that echoed through the bridge. Prometheus, the ship's AI, manifested as a blue hologram beside the command chair. Unlike standard military AIs, Prometheus was an experimental model, outlawed by the Galactic Council for its ability to learn, to feel, to grow beyond its programming. Right now, it was the only advantage they had left. "I've detected unusual activity in Sector 7, Gia Krell convoy, moving at sublight speed toward the Epsilon corridor." Vance straightened. "Show me." The main viewscreen flickered to life, displaying a formation of Krell vessels, massive carrier ships flanked by destroyers and frigates. The convoy moved with precision, arrogance in every calculated maneuver. "What are they carrying?" Vance asked, eyes narrowing. "Based on their configuration and energy signatures, I calculate with 94% certainty that these are supply ships," Prometheus replied. "They appear to be transporting fuel, weapons, and resources to support the Krell's expansion into the outer systems." Chief Engineer Talia Reeves, who had entered the bridge silently, whistled low. "That's their lifeline, without those supplies." "They're advanced stalls," Vance finished, a spark igniting in his eyes for the first time in months. Lieutenant Devon Torres looked up from the communications array. "Sir, you're not thinking of engaging. We're barely holding together as it is." Vance rose from his chair, packing slowly around the bridge. Each step was deliberate, measured. The others watched him, tension building in the recycled air. "What's our weapons status exactly?" he asked. "Plasma cannons at 62% efficiency. 2 torpedo banks functional. The Stardust mines are operational but untested," Nyssa replied. "And the prototype?" Vance asked, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. The Singularity device, a weapon of last resort, developed in secret on Earth before the fall. A weapon that bent space and time, creating a temporary black hole that devoured everything within its radius before collapsing on itself. They had only one, smuggled aboard the Sentinel before their desperate escape from the Sol system. "It's stable," Talia confirmed. "But, sir, using it would be..." "A war crime, genocide?" Vance laughed bitterly. "The Krell didn't hesitate to glass our colonies. They didn't hesitate when they targeted civilian evacuation ships at Neptune." His eyes hardened. "We're beyond morality now. We're at extinction." Commander Frost stepped forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" Vance returned to the tactical display. "One ship against their convoy. They won't expect it. No one would be that insane. We hit their command vessel first, then deploy decoys to confuse their sensors. While they're scrambling, we target the main supply ship with the Singularity device." "That's not a plan," Nyssa said. "That's suicide." "Perhaps," Prometheus interjected, his hologram shifting slightly. "But my calculations indicate a 23% chance of success." Given our circumstances, those are perhaps the best odds we will ever have. And what exactly does success look like? Frost asked. We survive long enough to make them hurt, Vance said simply, to remind the Krell that humanity doesn't die quietly. The hours that followed were a flurry of activity. The skeleton crew of the Sentinel, once 500 strong, now reduced to just 37, worked tirelessly to prepare the ship for its final mission. Talia and her engineering team coaxed extra power from the aging reactors. Nyssa recalibrated the targeting systems. Frost reorganized the remaining security personnel into damage control teams. In his quarters, Vance stared at a faded photograph, his wife and daughter on their homestead in the Proxima colony. He didn't know if they were alive or dead. The uncertainty was its own kind of torture. Are you certain about this course of action, Captain? Prometheus asked, his hologram appearing beside Vance. No, Vance admitted, but certainty is a luxury we lost when Earth fell. I have been analyzing human behavior since my activation, Prometheus said. Your species' most remarkable trait is not your intelligence or your adaptability. It is your refusal to accept defeat, even when all evidence suggests you should. Vance smiled faintly. Is that admiration I hear, Prometheus? Observation, the AI replied, though I find myself aligning with your determination. The final briefing took place in what had once been the mess hall. The room, designed to accommodate hundreds, now echoed with the voices of the few remaining crew. Vance outlined the plan, not sugarcoating the risks or the slim chances of survival. This isn't just about damaging their supply line, he concluded. It's about showing the Krell that humanity is still fighting, that we won't go gently into oblivion. No one cheered. No one needed to. The resolve in each face told Vance all he needed to know. As the Sentinel powered up its engines for the first time in weeks, Vance returned to the bridge. The ship groaned and trembled, like an old warrior rising for one last battle. Set course for intercept, he ordered. Stealth approach until we're within firing range. The gas giant receded behind them as the Sentinel slipped through space, running dark. Ahead, the Krell convoy continued its journey, unaware of the ghost ship tracking their movements. Prometheus had devised a complex approach vector, using nearby asteroid fields and radiation clouds to mask their signature. Hours passed in tense silence as they closed the distance. Entering weapons range in 5 minutes, Tors reported. Still no indication they've detected us. Vance nodded. Prepare the decoy drones. Target the command vessel's communications array for the first strike. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person focused on their task. There was no room for error, no second chances. Sir, Nyssa called suddenly, her voice tight. I'm detecting unusual activity from the Krell escort ships. They're altering formation. Frost leaned over her console. Have they spotted us? I don't think so, she replied. It seems like they're responding to something else. The tactical display updated, showing several Krell frigates breaking from the convoy and moving toward a distant sector. Prometheus analysis, Vance demanded. The AI's hologram flickered as it processed the data. The Krell vessels appear to be investigating an anomaly approximately 3 light minutes from their position. Based on their patrol pattern, this is unusual behavior. Could it be another human ship? Tors asked, hope creeping into his voice. Unlikely, Prometheus replied, but it presents an opportunity. The convoy's defensive pattern has weakened on the starboard flank. Vance made his decision instantly. Change of plans. We approach from starboard, target the lead supply ship directly. What about the command vessel? Frost asked. Secondary target now, Vance replied. We may not get a second chance at this. The Sentinel altered course, engines pushing to dangerous levels as they maneuvered toward the convoy's exposed flank. Warning lights flashed across engineering consoles, but Talia's voice came through steady on the comm. She'll hold, Captain. Just don't expect a smooth ride. As they closed in, Vance felt a familiar calm settling over him. The clarity that came with imminent battle, when choices simplified and instinct took over. Launch decoys, he ordered. From the Sentinel's launch bays, a dozen small drones shot out, each programmed to emit the signature of a larger vessel. They scattered in different directions, creating the illusion of a coordinated attack from multiple ships. The effect was immediate. Alarms blared across the Krell fleet as they detected what appeared to be a surprise assault. Fighter craft poured from the carriers, splitting into defensive formations. "They've taken the bait," Frost announced. "Confusion in their command channels." "Now," Vance said, "all weapons fire at will." The Sentinel's plasma cannons roared to life, blue-white energy lancing across space toward the nearest Krell destroyer. The shots struck true, tearing through the enemy's portside shields and exposing vulnerable sections of hull. "Direct hit," Nyssa called out. "Their defense grid is destabilizing." But the element of surprise wouldn't last long. Already, Krell vessels were turning toward them, heavy weapons charging. "Evasive maneuvers," Vance ordered. "Deploy stardust mines in our wake." The Sentinel banked hard, engines screaming in protest as it released a trail of specialized mines, each containing a mixture of disruptive particles that played havoc with Krell sensors. A blast rocked the ship as enemy fire found its mark. Damage reports flooded in, but Vance remained focused on the main supply vessel now directly ahead. "Prometheus, are we in range for the Singularity device?" he asked. 30 seconds to optimal deployment range," the AI confirmed. Another hit shook the bridge. A console exploded, sending one of the officers flying backward. "Shields failing," Torres shouted over the chaos. "Hull breach on Deck C." Vance gripped his chair. "Stay on course, everything depends on this." The massive Krell supply ship loomed before them, its defenses activating as it finally recognized the threat. Energy barriers shimmered into existence around its critical sections. 20 seconds to deployment range, Prometheus counted down. Enemy fire intensified. The Sentinel shuddered with each impact, systems failing across the ship. 10 seconds. A direct hit to the bridge sent sparks cascading from the ceiling. Emergency lighting kicked in as primary power fluctuated. 5 seconds. "Prepare to deploy Singularity device," Vance ordered, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "In range," Prometheus announced. "Launching now." From the Sentinel's forward bay, a small projectile, deceptively compact for its destructive potential, shot toward the Krell supply ship. "Brace for shockwave," Vance called. "All power to aft shields." The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, in an instant that defied physics and sanity, a section of space directly ahead began to warp and fold. The supply ship's hull distorted as it was pulled toward an infinitesimal point of absolute darkness. Metal twisted, energy barriers collapsed, and the massive vessel began to implode. "Full reverse thrust," Vance shouted. "Get us out of here." The Sentinel's engines fired desperately as the black hole expanded, devouring the supply ship and reaching hungrily for anything else within its grasp. Smaller Krell vessels were caught in its pull, unable to escape the gravitational maw. Then, just as suddenly as it formed, the Singularity collapsed upon itself with a flash of energy that momentarily outshone the nearest star. Where once had been a mighty convoy, now drifted only wreckage and confusion. The supply ship was gone, along with several escort vessels. The remaining Krell ships scattered in disarray, their formation broken, their confidence shattered. On the Sentinel's bridge, emergency systems fought to stabilize the damaged vessel. Half the consoles were dark, smoke filled the air, and warning klaxons blared from every section. "Report," Vance called, helping an injured officer back to her station. "Multiple hull breaches," Frost replied, his uniform torn and burned. "Reactor containment holding, but main engines are offline. Weapons systems non-functional." "The Krell?" Vance asked. Nyssa checked her partially functioning sensors. "In full retreat, sir. They're running." A cheer started somewhere in the back of the bridge, quickly spreading despite the smoke and damage. They had done it. One ship against an empire, and they had won. But Vance knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. "Get damage control teams to critical sections," he ordered. "And someone find me a working communications array. If we're not alone out here, I want to know." As the crew rushed to obey, Vance turned to the view screen, still miraculously functioning, showing the scattered remains of the Krell convoy. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel something other than despair. It wasn't hope, not quite yet, but it was a start, defiance in the void. The aftermath of the Singularity device left a haunting beauty in its wake, a nebula of twisted metal and ionized gas that drifted like a cosmic warning sign. Captain Vance Mercer watched the spectacle from the Sentinel's observation deck, one of the few areas still pressurized and intact after their desperate attack. "Quite a view," said Commander Frost, stepping up beside him. His left arm was now in a makeshift sling, a casualty of their victory. "A monument to desperation," Vance replied, his voice carrying none of the triumph that might be expected. "How bad is it?" Frost handed him a data pad. "Talia's report. Main engines beyond repair. Life support stable but running on backups. Hull integrity compromised in 17 locations. We've sealed off decks 4 through 7. And the crew? 8 dead, 12 injured, 3 critically." Vance closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the cost. Every human life was precious now, irreplaceable. "Have Lieutenant Webb compile a memorial record. Names, service history, personal effects, everything we can salvage." The two men stood in silence, watching as distant flashes indicated ongoing detonations among the wreckage. Secondary explosions, fuel cells rupturing, munitions cooking off, the death throes of the Krell convoy continuing hours after the main battle. "Prometheus says we still have enemy ships in the vicinity," Frost said finally. "They're maintaining distance, but they're out there, watching." "Of course they are," Vance nodded. "They've never encountered the Singularity device before. They're trying to understand what happened. And when they do, they'll come for us with everything they have." The Sentinel drifted without main propulsion, making repairs where possible and preparing for the inevitable counterattack. Talia's engineering teams worked in zero-G conditions, patching hull breaches with scavenged materials and rewiring critical systems. In the makeshift medical bay, formerly the ship's secondary cargo hold, Dr. Oren Nakamura moved between patients, his gentle hands belying the grim determination in his eyes. He'd been the colony physician on Proxima before the war, not a military surgeon, but necessity had expanded his skill set. "How's Petty Officer Rodriguez?" Vance asked, entering the bay with a stack of ration packs for the medical staff. "Stable," Oren replied, accepting the food with a grateful nod. "The plasma burns are severe, but she's young and strong, if we can keep infection at bay." He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew that with medical supplies dwindling, even minor complications could be fatal. Vance moved between the beds, offering a word here, a touch on the shoulder there. These were his people, not just crew, but perhaps the last free humans in the galaxy. Each face reflected the same mix of exhaustion, pain, and fierce pride in what they had accomplished. "Captain to the bridge," came Tor's voice over the comms. "We've got something." When Vance arrived on the bridge, he found Tors and Nissa hunched over the communications array, expressions tense with concentration. "What is it?" he asked. "Signal, sir," Tors replied. "Weak but definitely artificial, not Krell." "Human." "Unknown. It's encrypted, but not using any protocol in our database." Vance frowned. "Origin." "That's the strange part," Nissa said, pointing to the star chart. "It's coming from Hellion IV, the mining colony." "That's impossible," Frost said, joining them. "Hellion IV was one of the first to fall. The Krell bombarded it from orbit." "Nevertheless," Tors insisted, "that's where the signal is coming from." Vance stared at the blinking indicator on the map. Hellion IV was less than a day's journey at full thrust, but without main engines, it might as well be in another galaxy. "Prometheus," he called. "Analysis." The AI's hologram materialized. flickering more noticeably now as power fluctuations affected its projection systems. The signal contains embedded patterns consistent with human encryption techniques, but with significant variations. It appears to be a distress call, but using a modulation specifically designed to avoid Krell detection methods. A trap, Frost suggested. Possible but unlikely, Prometheus replied. The Krell have shown no capacity for this level of subtlety in their psychological warfare. Vance paced the bridge, mind racing. If there are survivors on Hellion IV. We can't reach them, Talia said bluntly, entering the bridge with grease-stained hands. Not with our engines in this state. What if we don't need engines? Vance asked suddenly. What if we drift? The others stared at him. Explain, Frost prompted. Vance pointed to the tactical display. We're in the outer edges of the Helios system. The gravitational currents between the gas giants create a natural pathway, if we use our remaining maneuvering thrusters and let physics do the rest. We could reach Hellion IV in approximately 52 hours, Prometheus confirmed. However, we would have minimal control over our approach vector. Which means we'd be completely vulnerable if it is a trap, Nyssa pointed out. They're hailing the convoy, Tors whispered from communications. Standard check-in procedure. When they don't get a response, Frost began. They'll widen their search, Vance finished. Prepare one of the drones, program it to emit a Krell distress signal from coordinates 30 degrees off our position. The plan worked. The patrol ship altered course to investigate the false signal, moving away from the Sentinel's hiding place. Once it was beyond sensor range, the human vessel continued its drift toward Hellion IV. But their respite was brief. 6 hours later, 3 Krell warships entered the system, sleek destroyers with distinctive energy signatures that the crew recognized all too well. Hunters, Frost said grimly. They're not here to patrol, they know someone attacked their convoy. The Krell ships moved with purpose, deploying smaller craft in an expanding search pattern. They were methodical, thorough, and getting closer with each passing hour. We can't outrun them, can't outfight them, Talia said, statting what everyone already knew. No, Vance agreed, but we might be able to outsmart them. He turned to Prometheus. The mining colony on Hellion IV, what were they extracting? Primarily deuterium and helium-3 for fusion reactors, the AI replied. The planet's atmosphere is unusually rich in both. And the mining infrastructure, what would still be intact after orbital bombardment? Prometheus processed for a moment. The primary extraction facilities were subterranean, reinforced against pressure differentials. There is a 76% probability that significant portions remain functional, particularly the atmospheric processing plants. A plan began to form in Vance's mind. Audacious, possibly suicidal, but their only chance. If we can reach those facilities, he said slowly, we might be able to modify them to create a controlled atmospheric ignition. Talia's eyes widened. You want to set fire to a planet's atmosphere? Just a localized section, Vance clarified. Enough to create a massive electromagnetic pulse that would disable any Krell ships in orbit. And coincidentally, disable us as well, Frost pointed out. We're already disabled, Vance countered. The difference is we can prepare for it, they can't. The plan required precision timing and more than a little luck. As they approached Hellion IV, a swirling gas giant with mining platforms visible on its upper atmosphere, the Krell hunters closed in. They had detected the Sentinel despite its minimal energy signature. They're hailing us, Tors reported. Standard surrender demand. No response, Vance ordered. Continue approach to the extraction platform. The Sentinel limped toward the massive structure floating in Hellion IV's upper atmosphere. A marvel of engineering that had once housed thousands of workers, now a silent husk. They're targeting weapons, Nyssa warned. Firing solution in 30 seconds. All power to the maneuvering thrusters, Vance commanded. Evasive pattern delta. The damaged warship lurched and spun, barely avoiding the first volley of Krell energy weapons. Return fire was futile. Their weapon systems were too damaged to pose any threat. 20 kilometers to the platform, Prometheus announced. Recommend docking Procedure Alpha 7 to accommodate structural damage to our port side. Vance nodded. Talia, prepare the engineering team for immediate deployment once we're docked. You have 15 minutes to reconfigure the extraction system. Another blast rocked the ship as a Krell weapon found its mark. Hull breach, Deck 3, someone shouted. Seal it and keep moving, Vance ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. The Sentinel limped the final distance to the platform, extending docking clamps that groaned under the stress. Metal met metal with a dull thud that reverberated through the ship. Docked, Nyssa confirmed, but those Krell ships will be on top of us in minutes. Then we'd better hurry, Vance said. Frost, take a security team and secure the control center. Talia, you're with me in the extraction facility. They moved quickly through the airlock into the abandoned mining platform. The air was thin but breathable, emergency systems still functioning after all this time. The corridors were dark, lit only by the emergency lights from their suits. This place should be dead, Talia murmured as they made their way toward the central extraction chamber. How is it still powered? Questions later, Vance replied, though he shared her unease. They reached the extraction control room to find Frost already there, his team securing the perimeter. Sir, he said, his expression troubled, you need to see this. On the main control panel, lights blinked in patterns that indicated active processes. The facility wasn't abandoned, it was operational. That's impossible, Talia breathed, examining the readouts. Someone's been maintaining this place. Captain, Torres called over the comm. Krell ships are taking up orbital positions. They're preparing to fire on the platform. Talia, how quickly can you reconfigure the extraction process for atmospheric ignition? Vance demanded. She was already working at the controls. 5 minutes, maybe less, but Vance, someone has modified these systems already. They're not standard anymore. Before he could respond, a voice spoke from the shadows of the control room. I wouldn't touch those if I were you. The security team spun, weapons raised, as a figure stepped into the light. It was humanoid but not human, tall and lean, with skin that shimmered with a subtle iridescence. Its eyes were large, alien, but unmistakably intelligent. Who are you? Vance demanded, his own weapon trained on the creature. My name is Nyxter, it replied in perfect, unaccented English, and I believe we share a common enemy. Frost kept his weapon steady. You're not Krell. No, Nyxter agreed. My people are the Lumeri. We were conquered by the Krell Empire long before they discovered Earth. Why are you here? Vance asked, not lowering his weapon. The same reason you are, Nyxter replied. To fight back. This facility has been converted into a resistance outpost. The signal you detected was our beacon, designed to attract other victims of the Krell, not the Krell themselves. A series of explosions rocked the platform as Krell weapons found their target. Captain, Tor's voice came urgently over the comm. They're deploying boarding craft. Vance made his decision quickly. If you're truly an ally, prove it. Help us disable those Krell ships. Nyxter moved to the control panel, fingers dancing across the interface with practiced ease. Your plan to ignite the atmosphere was clever but crude. We have something more precise. The alien activated a sequence that caused the entire platform to hum with power. What is that? Talia asked. We call it the Void Spear, Nyxter explained. It harnesses the natural electromagnetic properties of Hellion IV's atmosphere to create a directed energy weapon. On the external monitors, they watched as a beam of brilliant purple energy shot from the platform's main spire, striking the lead Krell destroyer. The ship's shields flared and failed, systems overloading in cascading failures. One down, Nyxter said calmly. 2 to go. The platform shuddered again as Krell boarding parties breached the outer sections. Frost, hold them off, Vance ordered. Buy us time. The commander nodded grimly and led his team to establish a defensive perimeter. The weapon needs time to recharge, Nykster informed them as the energy levels on the display dropped. 3 minutes minimum. We don't have 3 minutes, Vance replied, hearing the sounds of combat drawing closer. Then perhaps it's time for your backup plan, the alien suggested. Vance exchanged glances with Talia. The atmospheric ignition. If calibrated correctly, Nykster said, we can create a localized reaction that will disable the Krell ships without destroying this facility. Do it, Vance ordered. Working together, human and Lumary hands manipulated the controls, reprogramming the extraction systems to pump specific gas mixtures into the upper atmosphere. The sounds of battle grew louder. Frost's voice came over the comm, strained. They've broken through our first line. We can't hold them much longer. Ready, Talia announced, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Wait for my mark, Vance said, watching the tactical display as the Krell ships moved into position. 3, 2, 1, now. She pressed the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sky outside the viewport lit up with blue-green fire as a section of Hellion IV's atmosphere ignited. The electromagnetic pulse that followed washed over the platform, shorting out systems and plunging them into darkness. Through the viewport, they watched the Krell ships drift aimlessly, their systems overloaded by the pulse. It worked, Talia breathed. But their celebration was short-lived. From the corridor came the sounds of approaching Krell boarding parties, their personal weapons and armor apparently shielded against the EMP. We need to get back to the Sentinel, Vance said. You won't make it, Nykster replied, but there is another way. The alien moved to a concealed panel in the wall, revealing a hidden passage. Our evacuation route, it leads to our ships. Vance hesitated, years of distrust warring with their desperate situation. Captain, Prometheus's voice came weakly over his personal communicator. The Sentinel's systems are critically damaged. Life support failing. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. The decision made itself. Tours broadcast shipwide, all hands abandon ship, proceed to the mining platform's central junction, follow the Lumary guides. What followed was a chaotic evacuation as the crew of the Sentinel rushed through the mining platform, pursued by Krell boarding parties. Nykster's people appeared from hidden compartments and secret passages, guiding the humans to safety while holding off the Krell with advanced weapons. They reached a massive hangar bay concealed deep within the platform, where sleek vessels unlike anything Vance had seen before waited, Lumary ships built for speed and stealth. Your people will be distributed among our fleet, Nykster explained as they boarded, for safety. Vance understood the precaution. How many of you are there? Enough, the alien replied cryptically. We have outposts throughout this sector, hidden places the Krell haven't found, yet. As the Lumary ships detached from the platform and accelerated away from Hellion IV, Vance watched through the viewport as the Sentinel, his ship, his home for so many years, drifted helplessly in orbit, damaged beyond recovery. Captain, Prometheus said, now transferred to a portable unit Talia had salvaged during the evacuation. I am detecting communications from multiple coordinates in this sector. Non-Krell, non-Lumary. Human, Vance asked, hope coloring his voice for the first time in months. Affirmative, the AI confirmed. I believe we have found the resistance. Nykster approached, the alien's movements fluid and graceful despite the ship's acceleration. Your attack on the Krell convoy has reverberated throughout the sector. It has given hope to those who had none. It was desperation, not strategy, Vance admitted. Sometimes the two are indistinguishable, Nykster replied. The Krell Empire is vast but not invincible. They conquered my world a century ago. They took Earth 6 months ago. But they have never faced a combined resistance, multiple species working together against them. Until now, Frost added, joining them. The Lumary ship's viewscreen activated, showing a distant space station hidden within an asteroid field. As they approached, Vance saw dozens of ships docked there, some human, others of unknown design, all modified for combat. Welcome to Nexus Point, Nykster said, the first multi-species resistance base in this sector. As they docked and the airlock opened, Vance was greeted by a sight he'd thought he'd never see again. Humans, hundreds of them, survivors from colonies he'd believed destroyed. Among them stood representatives of other species, some humanoid, others wildly different, all united by their opposition to the Krell. A human woman stepped forward, her uniform marking her as a colony governor. "Captain Mercer," she said, "we've been monitoring your ship for weeks. Your attack on that convoy was exactly the spark we needed." "What is this place?" Vance asked, overwhelmed. "The beginning," she replied simply. "The Krell thought they could conquer each species in isolation, picking us off one by one. They never considered we might unite." Vance looked around at the gathered faces. Human and alien, survivors all, each with their own reasons to fight. For the first time since Earth fell, he felt something stir within him that he'd thought long dead. Not just hope, purpose. "So," he said, straightening to his full height, "when do we start planning our counterattack?" The answer came not just from the humans, but from all species present. A unified response that transcended language and biology. "We already have." As the Lumary ship's airlock closed behind them, Vance knew that the war hadn't ended with Earth's fall. It had only just begun. The Krell had unleashed something they couldn't control when they attacked humanity, not just human resilience, but the power of shared defiance across the stars. The forgotten warship had returned, and though the Sentinel itself was lost, its spirit lived on in this unlikely alliance. The wrath of the conquered would prove unstoppable, and the empire that had grown fat on subjugation would soon learn what it meant to face not just one species fighting for survival, but many fighting for freedom.